Welcome to Hidden History, Stories from the Secret City. I'm Ray Smith, and my co-host, Keith McDaniel, is not going to be with us today. Keith is running a 7-day shootout video or short movie contest, and that's got him tied up. So he's not going to be with us today. I do have a guest with me today that I'm proud he's agreed to be on here, Gordon Fee. Gordon was the president of the Lockheed Martin Energy Systems in Oak Ridge. Back at that time, Gordon, you had responsibility for all of the sites in Oak Ridge, both the K-25 gaseous diffusion plant and the Y-12 Y-12 plant at that time, the Oak Ridge Y-12 plant, and the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, as well as the gaseous diffusion plants in Paducah, Kentucky, and Portsmouth, Ohio. And as you know, things split up after that into various other companies running portions of the government facilities. But at the time you were there, all of them were under one operation. I believe the laboratory went out first, but they started breaking up in after 1984. But now, since Gordon has retired, Gordon has had a continuing career with the state of Tennessee, working in education, and he's also been a strong proponent for tourism in Oak Ridge. And that's where Gordon and I have been working together for a number of years now on trying to help folks understand the significance of what we have to offer for tourism in Oak Ridge. Gordon, how are you doing this morning?
Doing good, Ray.
Uh, all right. We're
Happy to
going
be
to talk,
back.
yeah, we're going to talk about a few things that are going on currently in Oak Ridge, and we'll roll some history into it as well. But I've asked Gordon to bring us up to speed on something that I'm very excited about, and it's called the Giants of Oak Ridge. And it's some statues that we're going to build in Oak Ridge. So, Gordon, tell us how that came about and bring us up to speed on where we are.
Sure will, Ray, and it's great to be with you. I have followed your career in the history world and can't thank you enough for all the stories that you have learned and tell us all about the history of Oak Ridge. There's nobody that understands it better than you do now, in my opinion. So, yeah, this project of statues,
Yeah.
when you think about the Oak Ridge, most people think about it as the contribution to the atomic bomb that dropped on Japan and the secrecy that went with it. In fact, the real story of Oak Ridge takes place after the war. It's the contribution to the civilian use of nuclear power, to the medical world, and other things like that, that Oak Ridge should really be known about because that's what they have contributed most to mankind. And as you and I have talked about over the years, telling that story is tough. And to get people off the idea that we're only the bomb city and secret city. And so most recently, we've all begun thinking about how can you tell that story better?
Yeah,
And
Gordon, let me interrupt to tell the folks that what Gordon is talking about didn't start with us. This idea that there's more to Oak Ridge than the atomic bomb. Even Alvin Weinberg, before he passed away, he was the director of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory for, I believe, 15 years. And when he was asked, what's the most important thing Oak Ridge has done for the world, he said, nuclear medicine. And the interesting thing I find about that is the exact same equipment, the exact same science that separated the uranium for Little Boy also separated those stable isotopes that were sent over to the graphite reactor, made radioactive, and produced nuclear medicine. So Alvin Weinberg understood that there was something far beyond the atomic bomb that was beneficial to mankind. excuse me, Gordon, that's not even to mention his contribution to nuclear power. As you well know, he promoted molten salt reactors, and now what are we building?
Oh, yeah.
Molten salt reactors. Alvin was right. So sorry for the interruption, but I wanted to get the emphasis that Alvin Weinberg placed on things other than the bomb being more important for the history of Oak Ridge.
That's actually a perfect story to transition into. How do you tell that story in there? And you and I, for years, began talking about the idea of statues of some of the nuclear pioneers. There's a number of firsts in Oak Ridge that need to be remembered. We were the first to produce the concept of a reactor to drive submarines.
Mhm.
And the Navy was born here. The actual association of universities in developing the curriculums and other things needed to teach about this new thing called nuclear energy was born in Oak Ridge by a gentleman named Bill Pollard. Learning to deal with radioactivity, even though people were always exposed to radioactivity or rays from the sun, nobody understood what the new world that was born with the bomb might be used for peaceful uses. And the actual transition to peaceful use of nuclear energy started very early in 1946, 47 period. And as you just indicated, medical isotopes were first shipped in 1947 to a hospital in St. Louis, and thus was born nuclear medicine. Shortly after that, the Nautilus submarine was launched in early 50s, and it utilized a reactor whose concept was developed in Oak Ridge, and we gave birth to the nuclear navy by two gentlemen by the name of Hyman Rickover and Alvin Weinberg, and they partnered together to come up with the idea of how could you drive a submarine with a nuclear reactor in order to take advantage of the fact that the submarine using nuclear power would not have to be refueled for years, as opposed to the diesel driven, which had to have oil all the time. I saw a recent quote that said Rickover was the Spartan general and Weinberg was the philosopher in their partnership in there. So the nuclear navy was born. The Nautilus was fueled out of Oak Ridge after they developed the reactor. The K-25 plant produced the enriched uranium that even today is used to drive some of the nuclear submarines and aircraft carriers that are out there in the Gulf protecting us right now. That fuel came from the K-25 plant. So all these led back to individuals, each of which had made some contribution. And the first gentleman that we remembered was a gentleman in the Army by the name of Colonel Kenneth Nichols. Uh, Most of you have seen the movie Oppenheimer, and it focuses, as it should, on General Groves, the head of the Manhattan Project, and his contribution in dealing with the president and the Congress and all the scientists at Los Alamos. But it left out the story of Colonel Nichols. Colonel Nichols is the one that really ran the day-to-day activities of the Manhattan Project. He actually relocated to Oak Ridge to 111 Omni Lane and lived here with his wife and daughter. And beginning in the early 40s, oversaw the construction of Oak Ridge. So we really need to honor him as the father of Oak Ridge. But he didn't stop here. He also could be claimed to be the father of some of the other facilities at Hanford and even some at Los Alamos. So he was a commanding figure and a very important contributor to the Manhattan Project and its success. He's the person who had the job of procuring the uranium needed to start the whole process. He bought the uranium to use in the weapons. He's also the person that people remember for procuring silver to be used at the Y-12 separation plant. When they were building these big plants, they had lots and lots of electrical needs and miles of wire needed. And copper was in very short supply. It was used in the war effort for a number of things. So someone got the brilliant idea for the Y-12 plant that needed miles of electrical wiring to use silver. And the story goes that Nichols went to the Department of Treasury and indicated that he needs some tons of silver, to which the response from the Treasury Department was, Colonel, we don't usually talk about tons. It's ounces that we talk about, troy ounces. He said, well, give me 386,000 or 395,000 troy ounces, to which the treasurer guy, I think, almost fainted. But that deal was consummated thanks to Colonel Nichols. And so when we thought about how do you tell this story, we kept talking about why not statues of some of these key individuals. And but there was this problem. We all knew that statues several years ago, even 2 or 3 years ago, were very expensive and cost on the order of about $70,000 to $80,000 to cast a statue in bronze. And that's, even today, that's a lot of money to think about how you might come up with multiple statues at that price. And so it sort of was on the back burner, but in people's minds. And then there was an effort started by our local historic society to commemorate the most famous photographer of the era, the Manhattan Project era, and a guy by the name of Ed Westcott took over 16,000 different photographs and was the youngest photographer ever employed by the Corps of Engineers to take the pictures. And so they launched an effort at about $70,000. And we watched that and said, boy, it'd be nice to figure out how we could commemorate some of these others. And just by happenstance, you and I will go off to the meeting of the East Tennessee Economic Council, and that speaker that day was the superintendent of schools. And he brought with him a unbelievably brilliant guy by the name of Dr. Mark Buckner.
Right.
And Mark entertained the audience with what he was doing with high school kids to actually learn advanced manufacturing, and how he was trying to bring him into this new world that we're living in, where the computer and computer science plays a bigger and bigger role in manufacturing. And we looked at each other, you and I, and said, I wonder if we could entice him to become part of a project to 3D print statues. We'd all begun to hear the story of 3D printing, and knew that ORNL, the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, had a lot of capability in that era. And so we asked him to have a meeting with us, and he bought into the idea and said, yeah, I think I could print statues, but I don't have the equipment at all.
Yeah.
So we thought it was kind of, would be sort of in the back burner in his mind for a while because he didn't have the equipment. But lo and behold, did we realize that Mark went off and in 10 days writes a proposal to Oak Ridge National Laboratory to buy the equipment that he needs with a grant from them. Well, a guy by the name of Dave Keim, the Vice President of Community Affairs at ORNL, liked the idea a lot. And he actually, in almost a record time, about 3 or 4 weeks, actually came up with a grant to the Oak Ridge school system of $250,000. To me, I still shake my head in the bureaucracy of the government facilities, how anybody But that money would come not from the government, but from the consortium that runs the laboratory, the University of Tennessee and Battelle Corporation. And so we were launched, and this is now about 18 months ago.
Right.
When we did that, we thought the ideal person to do the first statue for would be Colonel Nichols,
Right.
unsung hero. And therefore, we began seeking pictures because he's long deceased. And the idea would be, how could we take pictures of someone, use the computer technology today to take those pictures and convert them into instructions for the computer-driven 3D printers and create a statue of Colonel Nichols. Turns out in all of this, the hardest problem to do is find these dang pictures of these people. Each one of them, and I'll talk about who the others are here in a minute, each one of them, you have to find the pictures and you think, well, there are millions of them out there. Well, I hope somebody can find me one of Admiral Rickover. You can find tens of pictures of Admiral Rickover's head and his chest, but you have only one or two pictures where they're standing up, which is what we need.
Yeah.
Thus, we launched with Mark Buckner, with him on the lead and the money available for the printer. But then it became pretty obvious that the printer was only the beginning of the story because he needed more equipment. And ultimately, over the years, Amazon, of all people, actually donated a robot to him, $90,000 robot for free. And he got that installed in there. And right at this particular moment, he's put 6 young people from the high school students to work this summer to develop the language in order to take those pictures and convert them into a statue. And we'll start out with a statue that's 12 inches tall, and then hopefully over the fall we'll grow to a full scale statue of General Nichols, and hopefully give him the backing to be actually remembered as the father of Oak Ridge.
Yeah, Gordon, let me insert the contribution that we've had from his son, David Nichols, and from his grandniece, Barbara Scollin. She has provided, well, they have provided the photographs that we're going to use. You must know that you mentioned the Oppenheimer movie, and I enjoyed that movie. It was really a good movie about Oppenheimer, but I don't believe it treated Colonel Nichols as well as it should have and or could have. And I think Barbara saw that as well. So, as you well know, she has contributed up to now some 18 articles that we published in the Oak Ridger under the Historically Speaking column. And she has there's still about 10 or 12, I believe 12 more to go. So we're learning about, and we're calling it the father of Oak Ridge because I think you're exactly right. When you look for a single individual who had the substantial amount of influence on what actually took place here in Oak Ridge, I think you'll find that at that time, Colonel Nichols, who eventually retired as a major general, I think you'll find that he was in the lead or behind the scenes in some cases in all things that were taking place here in Oak Ridge. And I'm talking about the building of the city. I'm talking about the 3 sites that were created here. His prints are all over all of them. And the fact that we have coined this phrase, or actually Barbara did, the father of Oak Ridge, is an appropriate recognition for what he's contributed to our history. So I really want to appreciate what Barbara has done, and David. They're both working together on it. Actually, when we finish this thing, it will be published as a book, and I think that's going to be good as well. She's using one of Colonel Nichols' books, well, his book that is the one that's most most well known, this one here, the road to Trinity, is her basis for it. You'll notice that I've used it a bit as a reference too, and have marked several pages in it. But I think recognizing Colonel Nichols is very appropriate, and I appreciate the help that we've been given by Barbara and David.
I think that's all true. And the rest of the story, as the man would say, is that General Nichols went on to become the first the deputy manager and then the actual general manager of the Atomic Energy Commission that was born in the early 50s. And under that job, he began working for President Eisenhower. And if there's any one president that gave birth to the nuclear era for private use of nuclear energy, it was Dwight Eisenhower.
Okay.
He actually announced the program as Atoms for Peace. And in that particular program, General Nichols had the responsibility of actually working with a whole series of foreign countries where the United States shipped them enriched uranium to use in their facilities to develop medical isotopes or do research on nuclear energy, all the way from Japan, of all places, to India to Switzerland. In the case of Switzerland, General Nichols oversaw the actual design and construction in Oak Ridge of a total 5 megawatt reactor, research reactor, pool reactor, and they shipped it for the Atoms for Peace conference in Switzerland, in Geneva, and they operated that research reactor. And then, of all things, they picked it up and moved it to a university in Switzerland. And all that came under the watch of General Nichols in there. And so we just owe him a debt of gratitude for all the work he did, not just in the Manhattan Project, but helping us launch into the era of being able to produce electrical power, research, provide medical isotopes. And so I look at him as more than just the father of Oak Ridge.
Yeah.
But that led us to who else might be in a statues, and we developed a list of about 8 giants, we called them, of the pioneers that helped out, and each one of them has a unique place in the history of Oak Ridge. Bill Pollard for the actual development of Oak Ridge Associated Universities. It started out as 6 universities developing the curriculum needed to teach nuclear things. It is now over 140 universities, still going strong. People out of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory Biology Division who developed the standards for, of all things, how much exposure should a woman who's pregnant be exposed to with X-rays? Mm-hmm. Those standards still exist today. So we came up with a list of these other people that hopefully, after we get the full statue of Nichols, we'll go on to these other pioneers. But the dream doesn't stop there, as Ray knows. Getting a bronze statue is fine, but it doesn't really tell the history, because you know it's a statue and nobody ever heard of Colonel Nichols except the people who are deep in history in there. So we came up and started talking about why can't they talk? And off we go and discover that technology has moved faster and faster. What I mean, the technology to make statues talk. And as Ray knows, at the Denver airport, they have a gigantic animal that will have a conversation with you using
it's a gargoyle.
Things. It'll call you over and make fun of you while you're walking on the concourse, and you can have an actual conversation.
Right.
And we were all burned now into artificial intelligence things, and frankly, my grandchildren, all the children use this technology way before I even heard of it. us old folks in there. But so we're on a path right now to work with several of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory facilities to help these students learn how to make our statues talk. And the first statue, which we hope to get in September, will have the capability of using the old QCR codes to enter you into a discussion of what the statue is about and why it's there, et cetera, after you use the QCR code. But that's an intermediary step. There are statues, there's about 6 of them across the country now, that statues will talk and not only give you a pre-scripted speech, but have a conversation or an argument with you. This week I've been arguing with chat. It's unbelievable. You think you're talking to a human being, and it's just a computer in there. But that's our dream, is to go to the next step. There are, as I said, there's about 6 major places where you can see talking statues, and it's not just a script, it's a conversation. Disney obviously is out in the lead. Everywhere around us is moving forward with this idea. How do you immerse the audience in the story of history without reading a bunch of little words on the wall? I met this week with a gentleman who is in charge of bringing this advanced technology into the Ripley's Museum across the country. They have about 130 sites, and they made a decision in the last month or so that they will never put a display in that has nothing but little static words on the wall. Everything will be moving, enhanced with conversations, etc. And this technology is just roaring into the century that we're living into. And it's beginning to talk about immersion of you in events, whether it's entertainment, as you know, in just 17 miles away at Maryville, Tennessee, right now, they have a display of Van Gogh's paintings. Well, it's not just paintings on the wall. They use this advanced technology to be able to immerse you in his life and learn more about the paintings than just hanging on the wall to observe. A restaurant in Gatlinburg, if you want to see how this technology is advancing so fast. The Park Grill has just converted all the walls in their restaurant to make you believe that you're eating in the middle of the national park, and bears come out of the wall, and haven't got to that next step where the bears start talking to you.
Oh, they're headed there, I'm sure. And this is a good place to insert the technology that exists in Oak Ridge. That's actually using this approach that you're mentioning, the Oak Ridge Enhanced Training and Technology uh, Center, that's located just west of the main part of the city as you're going out, and it's a Y12 facility, but they have this training called they have the enhanced training and augmented reality is what it's called. I've actually been there and done that. And what you get is you can see yourself in the room you're in, but you can also see your fingertips, your hand, and you can see the thing that they're wanting you to learn to do. And you can actually move the things and watch them. So you're in the room, you see the room, but you also are doing something that's not there. I mean, it's only in that equipment. And they're working with Mark Buckner and his high school students to help create this augmented reality, this ability that we have to be able to see things that are only there through that virtual image. And of course the Oak Ridge Associated Universities is involved with them as well, with uh, Ashley Stowe working closely with Mark Buckner now and getting these enhanced technologies applied to the statues. And Gordon, you just have to think a minute. This was an idea that we had that we didn't even realize what we were talking about when we said we would like to be able to create full-size bronze statues that can go outside, but we'd like for them to talk. And think about where that's come from and where it's going.
It's unbelievable. And part of the problem is that these people talk in a language us old folks can hardly keep up with and understand. They keep talking about twinning, but this project of using high school kids to do this, as I said, I had a meeting with the fellow who's in charge of bringing this technology to the Ripley's Museum, and he's just blown away of what we're doing with high school kids.
Yeah.
He's spending over hundreds of thousands of dollars with a company out of New Zealand to do exactly what Mark Buckner is doing. We also need to move on and talk about the fact that the idea of putting this into a garden of 8 statues over a number of years, we got to thinking about the fact that that'll begin to tell the story of the history of Oak Ridge if we get the right people, and everything will come down to money. What can you get grants and for these? But just having statues alone, we got to talking about the fact that does it really tell the whole story, and how hard it is with just bronze statues. And that gave birth to the idea of looking for other kinds of attractions that might tell the story and also make it a destination for people who might want to come and learn about our history. We have now, what, 5 or 6 museums open that tell the Manhattan story. So we can tell you that story. But we don't tell you yet very well about the firsts. And one of the firsts is that we gave birth, as I indicated before, to the nuclear navy.
Yeah.
I just happened to see a story on the internet one day about the fact that a museum in Albuquerque, New Mexico, had put on display what us old folks call the conning tower from a nuclear submarine. They now call that the sail, S-A-I-L, in there. And they had gone to the Navy, the museum in Albuquerque, and convinced them to ship from Bremerton, Washington, the actual sail, cut it off from the decommissioned submarine as they were tearing it apart, and ship it across the country and put it on display where you can see it today in Albuquerque. And I'm thinking, again, they're trying to steal our history. We're the birth of the Navy. Let's look into doing that. And we were lucky enough to latch on to a couple of people from Y-12, Dave Beck and Gerald Lowe. And we all took upon us to get in touch with the Navy and get us up to speed on what it would take to actually get the sail from a decommissioned nuclear submarine shipped to Oak Ridge, and we'd put it on display in the garden with the statues to help tell that history story. And lo and behold, they said, yes, we'd love to do that with you. And the next submarine in line to be decommissioned is the USS Houston, SSN number 713, the 26th attack nuclear submarine in the fleet of nuclear submarines. That if we could come up with a not-for-profit organization and the money to ship this item, the sail from Bremerton, Washington to Oak Ridge, they would make that available. We have only a draft from the Navy as they wait for us to tell them we've got the money, but we needed a 501c3 to take ownership of the actual sail, and the sail is large. It's 52 inches long, and if you think about that, that's the
Feet.
same length as an 18-wheeler trailer.
That's feet, not inches.
Feet, I'm sorry, yeah, too old. Yeah, feet. It's the same length as an 18-wheeler trailer,
Right.
and it's either 17 feet tall if you talk about just the metal in the hull. When you add the antennas on top, it's 30 feet tall. In order to ship it, you have to cut it in three pieces and put it on three trucks in there at the cost of about $45,000. And so we're at the early stages of one getting confirmation from the Navy that we'll get that particular sale. And it has an interesting history, the Houston. It was actually commissioned, and as I said, it was the 26th nuclear submarine manufactured. Today, there's about 80 some nuclear powered ships. There's only two kinds in the fleet right now today. It's submarines. A number of submarines are still out there, and all of the aircraft carriers that are off in the Far East today, the Nimitz and the Ford, all are fueled with nuclear power in there. The interesting history of the Houston is that it actually did 9 major deployments in the Pacific. It was a submarine that served for some 35 years in the fleet. It was decommissioned in 2016. It was actually put into the fleet in 1981, and its sponsor, all of them have sponsors, was Barbara Bush. But also, the Houston has an interesting side. It is the stand-in for the submarine used in the search for Red October. She made 22 dives for that movie, and wasn't greatly enhanced by the crew. One crew member got 4 words in the movie, but the actual, if you remember that movie, the American submarine was called the Dallas, and that was really the USS Houston. So we're looking forward to try to consummate that deal. We're in touch with the Alumni Association from the Houston, and want to make sure that we honor the some thousand alumni that have served on her in that 35 years, and to appropriately remember that I cannot imagine living in a tin can for 90 days under the ocean. And it turned out in today's world, because of nuclear power, a submarine could run for years, 20 years, without having to be refueled. The short, the thing that makes the missions have to come up is food. uh, when they first sail for a deployment, they'll be carrying uh, just tons of food, and everywhere you look, there would be cans of food stored everywhere. But we hope that the Houston will represent the long-term relationship that Oak Ridge has with the Navy.
Yeah.
We didn't quit when we helped develop the power plant for the Nautilus, or the fuel for the Nautilus. The Navy has been part of the culture in Oak Ridge for all these years, and various things have happened. The K-25 plant actually built a model submarine for the Navy's Deep Lake Acoustic Research Center in Idaho, and we have the remnants in Oak Ridge with the rail car that was used to carry it out there. So we've manufactured parts for them. The Y-12 plant, which is the premier plant in the world for machining technology, was approached to make the propulsor for the Seawolf class submarines, the first one, the Seawolf. And because private industry could not do the job, they wanted a really tight adherence to the dimensions of making the propulsor, and only Oak Ridge could do it, and we did. and it was shipped, and it became so. When you look at the Seawolf, the first of that class of submarine, the power plant comes from Oak Ridge, the fuel comes from Oak Ridge, and the propulsor that drove it comes from Oak Ridge. And a lot of the side work on handling the fuel for the reactor was born at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So again, we have long ties to the Navy and supporting them uh, there. So nothing like technology interrupt you. And if I could figure out how to shut it off, I would, Ray.
I understand. We are the victim of our technology these days for sure.
Yeah, I was going to do that and get rid of it. Sorry about that, folks.
All right.
Anyway, we have this long-term relationship, and the goal then is to have these talking statues surround the Navy sail and begin telling that whole story of how peaceful use of nuclear energy and the continued use for defense purposes. I wouldn't want to, there's no question that the enriched uranium out of Oak Ridge continues to be employed for missiles. We all forget that we still have 400 missiles scattered across the Midwest, and so we'll continue to be a hub of nuclear energy, and we want to tell that history story in a way that people recognize that we're much more than the bomb. And anyway.
I think you're exactly right, and you mentioned the fact that we needed a nonprofit organization. The American Museum of Science and Energy Foundation is going to serve that purpose for us. And again, we have a draft letter from the Navy, and thanks to Gerald Lowe for his interaction with them, I believe we'll continue. And right now, the date that we're talking about to possibly get the USS Houston, it's hard for me to say sail, but I know that's what they call it, the conning tower. We're looking now at October of 2026 as a first draft possible date that we might have this to happen. So we've got a lot to do between now and October of next year in order to prepare for and to coincide, get it to coincide. You talked about statues. We would like to see a statue of Admiral Rickover and of Alvin Weinberg be located with that conning tower. I think that would be very appropriate. And as you mentioned, there are several other statues that could be considered, and the idea that we started out with a garden may change to where the garden is the submarine and the location for Rickover and Weinberg. We're considering where a more central location might be for the statue of the father of Oak Ridge, Kenneth Nichols. And I think that would be appropriate if we can recognize him in a more substantial way than has been done up to date. And then, of course, the Ed Westcott statue is becoming a reality. I think it's going to be located in Oak Ridge in the not too distant future. And among others that we're talking about, do you want to talk just a little bit about the Bill Wilcox statue?
Sure.
Yeah, that one is something that's a little different, but it's something that has a great deal of potential that's actually things happening right now as we speak at the K-25 location. So talk just a little about Bill Wilcox.
Sure. Let's close out the discussion on the sale, though,
Okay.
with one particular thing. I'd like to make sure that the public understands that the city of Oak Ridge is all behind this.
Yes.
The city manager, the city council. The city council had to pass a resolution to send to the Navy requesting this, and gave approval to the American Museum of Science and Energy to proceed with the full backing. And we could not ask for more support from the city manager on helping find a location for the historic garden and or the sale in that. So going on to this gentleman called Bill Wilcox. Bill Wilcox was an iconic figure in Oak Ridge. Ray today is the city historian and does a miraculous job. He's the second city historian. The first city historian was Bill Wilcox. Wilcox is a veteran of the Manhattan Project, came to Oak Ridge from New York State in the war years, 1943, and gradually moved from being a chemist at the Y-12 plant, where he actually arranged for the shipment of the uranium to Los Alamos for the first bomb. And he moved on through various different levels of contribution to the whole Oak Ridge complex. He moved from Y-12 to K-25 and became head of the physics department, and then moved on to be head of all research and development for both the K-25 plant and the Y-12 plant, and became the technical director for those facilities for years. And actually was represented Oak Ridge in a number of trips to Europe to talk to the various countries, France and England, who are deeply involved in also coming up with enriched uranium for their uses for peaceful generation of nuclear energy. And so Bill became an iconic figure in town. He was very active in the Episcopal Church also. But his real story to the public becomes after he retires. And he had a deep, deep interest in history. And so when he retires, he became actually the first city historian. And he worked hard at various places to tell the story of Oak Ridge, wrote several books, gave speeches all the time. And as a result of his contribution to the city and the history, the new interpretive center just coming online at K-25 will be named the William J. Wilcox Jr. K-25 Interpretive Center. And so he's being honored. I'm very lucky in that for 57 years, he was my mentor. And yeah, Ray's holding up one of the books, the brief history of that. But his real contribution to history of the Manhattan Project is that he became the chairman of a committee trying to figure out how to tell the story of the Oak Ridge Dash as it was entering into the phase of being torn down. And Bill put together this small group of people and began negotiating with the Department of Energy and the state of Tennessee on what could we do to save the history of this plant as it was torn down. Some 450 billion, some 450 million. Try again, Gordon. Some 450 different buildings.
Yeah.
But the primary one was the original building, the K-25 building itself, which was the largest building in the world during the Manhattan Project and the most costly contribution, and a marvelous engineering feat. Bill wanted to tell that story, and he ultimately wrote, with the help of his little committee, 9 different proposals to the state of Tennessee. And finally, the last one was accepted in early 2000s, and they began construction over the years. A museum came online several years ago that would never have existed without Bill Wilcox's personal drive and leadership and effort. And as a result, early here next month, The brand new $20 million interpretive center at K-25 will come online and be named for him. And so we're looking forward to that. And it's the right thing to do for this marvelous gentleman who just had his life on the history of things. And as Ray knows, you better tell the story right, or you're not going to get past Bill Wilcox. He will call your hand on every little problem if you're not exact in there.
Absolutely. I still use him as a reference in everywhere I'm looking. If I've got anything that Bill said or wrote about the history of Oak Ridge, I will refer to that and use it. Well, Gordon, thank you very much for bringing us up to speed on some of the more recent history in Oak Ridge and talking about the giants of Oak Ridge, the statues that we hope to create. And again, there are several opportunities for more than just the ones we've talked about. Colonel Nichols is going to be the first, Major General Nichols, but Colonel at the time he was here during the Manhattan Project. And that one, I'm excited about seeing what those high school kids are going to create. This first little statue, but then we're going to move to the full size uh, outdoor statues that can uh, and who knows? Maybe we can get Ripley involved and help them. I believe we can produce it at a better rate than this New Zealand company can.
The didn't finish the story. You asked me something, and I didn't finish the story. The hope is that we'll have a statue of Wilcox
Right.
as the interpretives at the inside of the so that he can tell you the story in his own words
Yes.
in there. So that's on the docket also, and it's been fun to tell you the story, Ray, to you, and we appreciate everything you do,
Yeah. Thank you.
running tours to writing newspaper articles to books. You just are a wonder to me, and we appreciate you a lot.
Thank you, Gordon. And I enjoy what I'm doing, obviously. And as you well know, I've done 30 bus tours since the Oppenheimer movie came out, and Oak Ridge is only mentioned twice in that movie. So tourism in Oak Ridge is on the upswing. Just within the last couple of weeks, I've had a group of 48 people they were county mayors from 7 states that came and spent the night in Oak Ridge, and we're able to take them on tours, give them insight into what's going on in the small modular reactors being built around town, even the fact that we have a fusion energy company, Type 1 Energy, that's located in the Bull Run steam plant. The history of Oak Ridge is being created, as our mayor Warren Gooch says, great things happen in Oak Ridge every day. And that we're living in that era right now in Oak Ridge when great things are happening. The Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, came here and challenged us to create a Manhattan Project 2.0 in order to provide electricity to the artificial intelligence data centers that are going to be blooming all over the nation. And there's a need for nuclear energy like there's never been before. So the nuclear renaissance is located here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And we want to be able to tell our history in the most effective way. And one of those ways is going to be the Giants of Oak Ridge talking statues. So thank you for bringing us up to speed. And folks, we'll see you next time on Hidden History Stories from the Secret City.